Finland, Sweden, and now the US. As a current PhD student in immunology at Stanford, she is working to uncover cures for bacterial diseases like typhoid fever and the flu by discovering how the body can block them. Outside the lab, she's very active in helping future scientists on campus at Stanford. She began a group called the Stanford Biotechnology Group, which brings in speakers to educate students on many different fields of science. She also tutors young scientists on how to communicate science in a clear way in a variety of situations to help bridge the communications gap between the scientific community and general population. So welcome to our guests. Before they start, I would like to remind you that you can post comments on the chat that you will find at the bottom of your website. And we will have a session of 45 minutes approximately, and at the end we will have 15 minutes where you will be able to ask all your questions to our participants today. Also, I would like to remind you that my colleague Silvia, she's doing the technical works of this webinar, so you can talk to her directly also on the chat. She's here with the name Silvia Giacon EUN, so you can talk to her in private on the chat for any technical problems that you might encounter. So that's all from my side. I will leave the floor now to Annette, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before you meet Martha, I just wanted to briefly introduce Amgen and the Amgen Foundation, just to provide you with a little background context. Amgen is a leading biotech company, and we are deeply rooted in science and innovation to transform new ideas and discoveries into medicines for patients with serious illnesses. The philanthropic arm of the company, the Amgen Foundation, seeks to advance excellence in science education, and our purpose is twofold. We want to inspire the innovators and the scientists of the future, but we also want to increase general scientific literacy for all to make for more informed and effective citizens. We have two strategies. One is hands-on inquiry-based experiences for students, such as the Amgen Scholars Program, and Martha will tell you more about her experiences shortly. And the second is professional development opportunities for teachers to strengthen their skills. We really see teachers as the catalyst for change in terms of driving science excellence across Europe. We have a number of programs for teachers and students in Europe, but let me explain a little bit more about Amgen Scholars. It provides young scientists around the world with a cutting-edge summer research experience. We partner with 17 institutions around the world, 10 in the US and 5 in Europe. And we also have a global program where we work with 2 universities in Japan. The universities that we work with in Europe are Institut Pasteur in Paris, ETH Zurich, LMU in Munich in Germany, Karolinska in Sweden, and the University of Cambridge in England. So how it works is undergraduate students from across Europe can apply to any of these European universities and also to the 2 in Japan. And they get to experience research at one of those institutions over the summer period, working with eminent scientists, in many cases having access to lab equipment that they simply would not have in their home institution. So it's a wonderful experience. And then at the end of the period, they all come together in a symposium, which is normally held in Cambridge, where they meet one another, meet scientists, attend lectures and roundtables, and also they conduct a poster display to share the results of their summer research projects. And I think, you know, apart from it being a scientific exchange, it's also a really important cultural exchange where like-minded young people from all around Europe get to meet one another and learn more about their cultural backgrounds and, importantly, make lifelong friends. That is a brief summary of the Amgen Scholars Program, and I'd like to pass you over now to Martha, who will tell you about her personal experiences and share her journey. Thank you very much.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Yeah? Okay, let's see if I can put the camera. Great. Hello. Okay, I guess can you see me though? I don't think you can.
We can't see you now.
You can see me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Annette and Sylvia, for having me here in this first ever webinar. I've never, this is the first for me, so I've never actually given a webinar, and I'm pretty happy that it is about my journey up to here. I am currently traveling, that's why I was asking about the connection, because I am now in Los Angeles, but I am usually at Stanford where I'm doing my PhD. So I made some slides, but obviously we can, if anybody has any questions, I guess we can do this, you know, a little bit more informally, and please feel free to stop me and ask me about my journey, or if something doesn't make a lot of sense, then please like stop me and make sure that you understand. So yeah, as Annette said and Sylvia said, my name is Marta. I'm currently doing my PhD at Stanford. I'm doing my PhD in computational immunology, and I can talk more about the science itself anytime. But for today, I wanted to kind of focus on how I got here. So how, you know, I started from Barcelona, where I am from, and I got, you know, to today being here in Silicon Valley. So yeah, I wanted to name the presentation Becoming a Global Scientist, because I think that's pretty much what my trajectory has been. So my presentation today is split in 3 parts. The first one, I'm going to focus more on like how I actually left Barcelona. It's my understanding that many of you guys are currently in Europe or other countries. So I'm guessing you might have students that are curious about, you know, traveling or going abroad. So that's my case. I was always very curious about exploring the world from a very young age, and because of science and other scholarships and help, I was able to do so. Then I want to focus on the university years, which is when I did my Amgen Scholars program, and in a way that was my stepping stone to becoming a scientist as I am today. And then obviously I'm going to talk a little bit about grad school, my project, and what am I thinking in terms of the future. So what do I want for later on? So as I said, how it all started. So I am originally from Barcelona. I was born there and I was raised there. And when I was in middle school, so about when I was at the age 14, I found a scholarship and I applied for it. And this scholarship basically allowed me to go and do my high school years abroad. And this is a picture. I guess you guys can see the presentation. So this is a picture of my high school. It is in the coast of Wales in the UK, and it's called Atlantic College, United World College. So when I was there, I did the International Baccalaureate, but this is a program that's very demanding just because it has a lot of other components, not just like the academic one, but it also has a service component in which you do community service as much as you take classes. And then there are a lot of other people from other countries in the world. So in there, I sort of started studying. I didn't know much English, but when I got there, it just kind of, it opened my eyes to how big the world was and how many interesting people were everywhere. Oops, I don't know why. Sorry, my presentation. I just got the, sorry guys, for some reason. Oh, something happened. I don't know, the Adobe thing is rearranging itself, so I'm not sure. I cannot see the presentation now. It says whiteboard. I don't want whiteboard. I apologize. 1 second. Oh, here we go. Great. Awesome. Sorry, I don't know what happened. I don't think I touched anything. I can see it now. Yes. Good. Good. Great. Anyway, so yeah, in there, I took science courses, but I wasn't really sure that I wanted to be a scientist. I was just like, I just really wanted to learn things. So yeah, I took science courses, chemistry, biology, and then I was able to, you know, basically find what I wanted to do was science, and I really liked it. I liked my professors, my teachers, but I also took other classes, and I always enjoyed learning more about other things, not just science. I think that's very important, that most scientists that I know that are great scientists are also very curious about everything, really. It's not just about, you know, how a caterpillar, you know, works. It's just like you want to know about history, you want to know about art, So it's a lot about all those things. And my science teachers were always very aware of how big the world is and like how much you can learn from everything, not just, mathematical equations. And I think that was very important for me from a very early age. Yeah, so that was my high school. And then after finishing high school, I returned to Barcelona. So this is let's see, yeah, this is the time course of my university years, which, as I said, were very much like just traveling from one place to another. But I started my undergrad in Barcelona. And then I really wanted to do research. I wanted to know what I really liked experiments. Let's just be honest. Like I like testing things. I like, having a hypothesis, making, trying to explore new things in science. I always liked it. So I knew I wanted research experience. And I don't know how many of you guys are from Spain, but it is hard as an undergrad in Spain to get research experience that's meaningful, just because there's not a lot of funding in general. So most professors are not willing to take undergrads in the lab just because if any of you have ever done experiments with undergrads or high school students, you know that most of the time they don't work. Most of the time people blow things up or they spill chemicals, and it is a lot of, money and like time that you have to put in. So when I started my undergrad in Barcelona, like I couldn't really get that research experience, so I started looking on other sites. So the first thing that I found was this program the other thing I have to mention is that I always looked for things and opportunities that were not in Barcelona because I really wanted to travel. And for me, that was the only way to do it, just because I guess in terms of time and funding, right, like I couldn't really be traveling on my parents' money. So I just found other ways to do it. So the first year I found this project in Zurich in Switzerland. And they basically were like, well, you could come here for the summer. It's similar to the Amgen program, but it is more international. And then they said, well, you come here and you can do research in one of our labs. And, we'll pay for your board and your travel. And that was great. So I stayed there. That was my first summer. And at the time, I thought I really wanted to do neuroscience. I guess I started my undergrad just being like, I like the brain. I think it's complicated enough. I could study it. So I did my research in a neuroscience lab, and I studied neuronal regeneration in the spinal cord. And I included a picture of chicks here, just because I was working with an animal model, which is the chicken. That was my first experience working with animals, and it was lots of eggs and just seeing how chicks grow. But it was an interesting experience. I guess after that summer, I sort of realized that neuroscience wasn't really for me. I liked it, but I wasn't really like on it so much. Then what I did is I returned to Barcelona, started my second year university, and I started, learning more and more as you are. And then I found the Amgen Scholars Program, and I think I put the date here wrong. It's 2010. That's what Sylvia said, and Marina said. Yeah, so exactly. So I was there at 2010, and that was definitely a very important summer for me. And this is the slide. So this is Stockholm, in Sweden, and I had a great time. I can definitely talk a lot about that project. I started a project in a lab that was an immunology lab. So I was studying tuberculosis, so mycobacterium tuberculosis, and we're using mice as our animal model. So no more chicken anymore. And it was just like, I really enjoyed it. I think I had a great mentor, and I felt like I knew what I was doing in the lab, which, I mean, in a way, it does play a big role when you become independent as a scientist. It's a different feeling because you don't have to be around somebody the whole time and just ask questions. And in the Amgen program, and I think probably because I had that experience the year before, I was able to basically be my own person and just do my own experiments and set my own schedule. And, you fail a lot, but you also, whenever you have something that's a small victory, it's also yours. So it just feels a lot better. And then obviously my cohort was amazing. So the other Amgen scholars that were with me, this is the Amgen Scholar Summer Program in Europe. So it was all European students, and there was, I believe I was the only Spanish one, but there was other, I mean, there French, German, English, Romanians, Estonian. There's a lot of people from all over. So I had a great time, and we lived together. So we lived in this housing in Stockholm, and then, you know, we would do work during the day, and then, you know, go down to the bars in Stockholm and hang out, and then go out for like trips and kayak in Sweden, which was great. So yeah, that was my summer. Sorry, the attendees list just took over my screen again. I don't know what happened here. I think this is probably somebody's regulating this. I'm not sure what's happening. Oh, here we go. Yes. Sorry, just my screen keeps changing, and I don't have control over this. Great. Anyway, so I finished this program, and I think after that program, I realized that I really wanted to do immunology, that I liked studying infectious diseases, and it was something that I found intellectually very stimulating. So basically, I went back to Barcelona, but then I applied for this scholarship in my university that allowed students to transfer to the US and basically do like their final year abroad. So what I did is I applied the scholarship, I got it, and then I went to Philadelphia, where I finished my undergrad. And it was great. I was at the University of Pennsylvania. And when I was there, it was just like I had, because of my Amgen research experience, I could get basically an internship in a lab at Philadelphia. So I was doing my classes, but I was also working in the lab in the evenings. And I just got a lot more experience as a scientist. And after that year, I applied for an internship in New York, and I got it. And then I worked at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory for a summer as well. And I was doing research, and this time in plants. So I decided I needed to learn a little more about genetics because I didn't know much. So I went to a lab that was doing research in Arabidopsis thaliana, which is this flowering plant that you guys see in the presentation. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with Cold Spring Harbor. It is an important lab in the sense of it is a historical place. It is where James Watson lives, and James Watson's the double helix from the Watson and Crick very much. So we could hang out with James Watson, which was kind of cool. He is an old guy, as you can see from the picture. But yeah, it was great experience. And basically after that summer, because I was done with undergrad, I was really lucky because I did well in that internship during the summer. And one of the professors there basically approached me and asked me if I wanted to work there for a year after finishing my internship. So I was planning to apply to grad school, and I guess that's my next, yeah, that was basically my decision point. It was like, so what do I do now? I knew I liked science. I knew I wanted a PhD at some point. So I decided to take that year, you know, between finishing my undergrad and starting grad school. I decided to take it basically off and apply and look for the best places in the world to do a PhD. And yeah, I was lucky enough just because one of my professors there knew that I was going to take that year off. So he offered me basically a position in his lab. And he said, if you want to stay here, you can do research with me. And basically I'll like pay room and board and you can stay in New York. So obviously I said yes, and I stayed there. And then I started looking for graduate schools, and I wanted to know what was out there. I guess this is a map of the US. So I was at Cold Spring Harbor doing my internship. I had done my undergrad in Philadelphia. And then I started applying for grad school in the US, which is kind of an adventure already. And yeah, basically when I was applying to grad school, I visited a few. And yeah, I really liked Stanford from the beginning. It's kind of my dream to go there one day. And it was basically like, for some reason in my life, I ended up being in a place where, you know, Stanford was a possibility. So yeah, when I interviewed there, I liked the professors a lot, and I basically got offered a position as a grad student in the immunology program. And it was just, yeah, it was a great moment. I felt like I had reached my peak in life, but not really. I think it's like life always keeps going. But it was one of those moments where, you know, you feel that all your work has paid off. But little I knew that I was going to have to work a lot more once at Stanford. So, so yeah, anyway, I got into Stanford and I started. And I guess I can talk a little bit about my PhD just for a few minutes. I'm not going to really linger on it. But yes, since my Amgen experience, I knew I wanted to study bacterial diseases. I knew I was interested in infectious diseases. And I looked up the labs at Stanford, and I found a lab. Oops, sorry, my lights are going off. Sorry, there we go. All right, sorry, this room is sensitive to movement. I'm in Google LA, so it's very tech savvy. Anyway, I knew I wanted to do bacterial diseases, so I found this lab that Denise's Monag lab, which is one of my mentors, and she was like, sure, you can come here, study whatever you want, because I did have a fellowship, so I didn't really need money from her or like her to tell me exactly what the projects I had to work on. But then I also knew that I was at Stanford, which is basically the mecca of, you know, computer science in a way. So I decided that I was going to learn how to code and program and use computers for research. So then I also joined another lab that's a computational lab. And yeah, I just started and I had a lot of questions about how infectious diseases work. So I decided to do a PhD that was merging both, right? Just the experiments and the experience that I've had as a geneticist, but also as a, you know, researcher, and then joining that with the new skills that I was learning as a statistics and data science that I was picking up. So yeah, that was great, and I got there, and I think it's been a good ride so far. It's been 4 years, so I'm getting ready, sort of writing up my thesis, and hopefully I will defend next year. It's been great. It's just been it's a different experience because if you think about it, like so I am the only European in my year at Stanford, and it's because it's just hard for us, like from Europe, to reach this place. And I will definitely I can see you guys typing the questions, so I'll be really glad to address them. I think it's been great, but sometimes it is hard just because you're far. Also, you know, you're not a native speaker, so that's, I mean, not that it matters so much anymore, but I think it is also one of those handicaps. But yeah, it's been good so far, and I think in terms of like what awaits for the future, I wanted to include this piece of Dr. Seuss. It's called "Oh, the Places You Will Go," and it's basically a thing that they make kids read here in the U.S. since they're pretty little, and it's great just because it's, you know, it encourages kids, and I would encourage your kids in school, if you have any, you know, time extra. It's just a great verse, like poem sort of thing, because it encourages people to dream and just to try harder and like further. And I guess one of the things that for me I always kept in mind is my grandfather always told me that you know, the no is already there, right? If you don't try, you never know. So yeah, of course, if you try, you will also have a lot of rejections, but you have to, like, you know, keep going. You can't stop. So I think it's a great poem, and it teaches kids that, like, you know, it's not impossible. You just have to try. And just to end up, and we can address questions now. I just wanted to make sure that I gave time to thank everybody, because I didn't get here by myself. There was a lot of people on the way, and there's still a lot of people on the way that like really helped me get here. And I realized I didn't put a picture of my parents, but definitely my parents helped me. I mean, you know, they took care of me as a kid, and then I guess from the age 14, they've been like, they don't really believe where I am, I guess, right now, because when I was 14, I did, you know, storm into the house and said that I was leaving and that I was going to go to the UK, and they didn't really play any part in that. So they've been kind of amazed, I guess, by that since that day. But definitely I had a lot of kids and like a lot of friends as a kid, but also growing up, my classmates, my lab mates, definitely my scout group. I'm a Girl Scout, so that's also played a big role. And obviously all my scientific mentors, and I put pictures of all of them here, since my high school professor to my undergrad mentor to like my Amgen scholar. I don't know if you guys can see, but my Amgen scholar mentor was this man that has the curly hair in the middle, and he was from Argentina, so it was great because we bonded in Spanish. And then I obviously have my two professors and lots more people, and obviously the funding, right? So I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all those people that have put their trust in me and gave me their time and money and patience. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I acknowledge their help. Yeah, and I guess I'm happy to address any questions that you have now, or if you any specific ones or any broad ones. I'm here to answer them. I know it's also Friday, so I guess like because for me it's so for me here it's 9 a.m. But I'm guessing for you it's it's pretty late and people probably want to like go do things. But yeah, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Okay, so if I get it right, so the first question is, do I think it is possible to get to this place today, right? Yeah, so I think it very much is, and even I think now, just because of how connected we are to the world, it is possible for sure. And I think also the fact that I mean, I see more emphasis being put in English, and I think that's super important because, like, I mean, one of the biggest handicaps for Spanish people, at least, is that our English is not that great unless we go to like a private academy or something, and it is not as common and they are expensive. So I think for me that was one of the first barriers that I encountered, right? Just being able to say, hey, I want to go, and like when I got to high school in the UK, my chemistry classes and my biology classes were in English, and I mean, I had my I don't know who here is Spanish, but I had my English level from like the ESO, which is not great. And I remember being there and I just wanted to like understand what was going on and talk to people, and it was so hard. But now the kids learn English a lot more, than I think it is a little easier. Um, I also think that just being aware of how big the world is and like how important it is to travel, that's also very important. And just because of the internet, I mean, I found out about my high school because I was cleaning out my classroom, and I found like a poster that was advertising these scholarships. And that's how I got involved in all of this. Like, it wasn't me like Googling anything, because Google wasn't really there yet. So I think now it's just much easier to get this information. Um, yeah, I guess, I mean, in a way, if you think about it, right, it is also harder because of this information is available, you probably have more competition, but I think it is easier in a way. And then the other thing, I guess the other question was, how would I encourage, I guess, your like students, right? So, or from an early age, how do you encourage kids to like get into STEM? Is that the question? Sorry, was that the question, Sylvia or Marina? Okay, great. So I think it's important to encourage students to like study STEM is important, but like I guess I said it in the beginning, I think it's the best is to encourage students to be curious and like to see like how awesome it is to learn new things. And I mean, if they are if they're super curious and like very interested in knowing how things work, I have a feeling that they'll probably decide to go into a STEM career, just because if you really are engaged on like understanding how the world works around you, it's just like you have to study science at some point. So in a way, it's important to steer them that way and just like stimulate their brain and just say like, okay, how do things work? Like, can we learn cool stuff about this? Can we build a new tool? Can we like how useful it is to know how things work and how to like ask good questions about everything, really, not just like, you know, biology and what's mitosis. Like I like that comes later. I think the first thing is just having this natural like curiosity about things. And like I think any single human being likes knowing how things work. It's just like teaching science, it's hard sometimes because there is so much material that we need to learn. And what teachers do, I mean, I guess looking back to my own experience, like I had some, I mean, at some point I was bored of biology. I remember in middle school, I was like, this is boring. Like, why do I need to learn about, you know, I guess chromosomes? I don't really remember what you learn in middle school, but like there are things that like they're not as engaging and you don't see it relating to you. But I think when you start understanding how beautiful things are and how, you know, complicated the human body is, right, and how many systems we have, or like other things about science, it doesn't have to be biology, but like chemistry or physics or even math, like math is awesome. And I guess like just the way that we're taught, I don't, I mean, I'm not a, you know, I don't have a master's in education or I'm not a pedagogian or anything, so I don't really know how. But I remember the best experiences for me were doing experiments and learning things that are applicable to my own life. Yeah, I guess that's my answer. Yeah. Yeah, so I'll tell you something that I usually tell my friends, because I mean, I am a pretty passionate scientist, but I also have a lot more things that I like to do. I really like art and music. And when I was deciding what to study for in university, so university in Spain, you have to commit to one career. So it's not like you have to, in the US, you start university and then later on you decide what you want to major in. In Spain, no. In Spain, you start whatever you want, like you know, medicine, biology, chemistry, physics. Um, so for me, my first choice was biology, and my second choice was law. So I thought that I was like, well, you know, I'd be happy being a judge. So I just liked knowing things, and I thought that studying law, I could travel as well, and I could study international law, maybe be a diplomat. So I figured like I love biology, but I also loved other things, um, and I guess, you know, I was encouraged from a very early age to like understand how things work. And I had bad teachers in biology. I mean, I think everybody's had them, right? Like you always have that teacher that is very important, but like, you know, you have a really bad teacher, you're gonna hate the subject. And I remember in my middle school, I didn't like math because I thought math was the worst. But then when I got to high school, I got a great math teacher and I loved it because I loved just solving equations. So I think in a way, it's like the teacher is very, very important, but I think it is also like who's around you. And, you know, sometimes teachers that, you know, I had a teacher, like an art history teacher, and I thought, I mean, he encouraged me in the way to study science later. I mean, it's not so much like directly related to like the actual subject, but sometimes you can have mentors that can encourage you regardless. Yeah. That's, I guess, my answer. Does that answer the question? Sure. As in like, if age matters in terms of deciding what you want to do in your career. Is that it? I think so, yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's nothing sadder than like a 5-year-old that wants to be like an accountant, right? Like, who does that? Like, I think it's hard because you can't be, 6 and decide to have a super specific, like, oh yeah, you're 6 and you want to work in like management consulting. Like, I mean, unless your dad's a management consultant, like, how are you gonna know? So I think age matters. Sorry, I'm just gonna make sure that the light is on. I think age matters just because you have to do things that are appropriate for age, right? So, maybe 7-year-olds want to be an astronaut, right? Which makes sense. Like, and I think when I was 7, I didn't know what immunology was, right? Like, I wanted to be a cook. Like, that's what I wanted to be. And I think as you grow older, right, like you have to adapt things for everybody's age. And there's nothing more discouraging than somebody pressuring you to be something, right? Like, I think when somebody is like, oh, you have to be, a university professor. Like, okay, maybe like if everybody tells me that I have to do this, I don't want to do it. So I think in a way, right, like encouraging people to do the things that they like, but also kind of guiding them to like the right path is important. Oops, sorry. Just kind of, my screensaver got activated. There we go. Yeah, sorry. Can you see the camera? I think it got stopped. I don't know what happened there. Let's see. All right, there we go. Now, yeah, I think it's important. I mean, I don't think there's an age where you decide, but I do have strong feelings about the system in Spain. I think at 18, it's really hard to know what you want to do. I think at 18, deciding whether you want to do biology or law, it is a big jump, like sometimes I think about it and like, I think I chose the right career, but who knows? Like there's a lot of my friends that, got into their major or their career just because they didn't get the grades to get into the one they wanted, right? They wanted to be doctors and they didn't get it, so they studied geology. And I'm like, well, that is a big jump, like, and I think I don't really like that system, but it is what it is. So I do think like forcing people to take decisions has never worked great in my life. And it's more like you go with it. And then I guess sometimes, and I've seen people that like really struggle taking a decision, they just don't know, right? And I guess when you just don't know is where mentors and family and friends and other people take a role, because you can ask them how their life is. But in the end, right, the decision is yours, so you have to take it at some point. I think it's so my mentors, I'm so thankful to all of them because they've had lots of patience, because I think especially if you're a budding scientist, you do make a lot of mistakes, and you blow up a lot of things in lab. So I guess for me, what I've learned from them is to basically challenge myself and like, get up when you fall. I think it's just one of those things that like you can't, if you have something that doesn't work out, you have to be able to basically like get up again, right? And like try again. And I think in a way, and many of the students that I see that are also very ambitious, like one of our biggest problems is that we put ourselves to very high standards. So when something doesn't work out, then you're really hard on yourself. So I think that's been one of the most valuable lessons that I've learned, that like you have to learn how to forgive yourself, and like you will you will have errors in your life. It's fine. It will happen. Like nobody is perfect, right? And like especially when you're learning, sometimes things are not going to work out, but you can't let yourself be defeated by that, right? You have to keep trying, and you just have to, learn from your mistakes. And then there's no point. I think the other thing is important. I learned how to be very honest with myself, but also with others. So when I don't know something, I say it, because there's nothing worse than like somebody telling you that they know everything and then they don't, and then they make something and something blows up in lab, right? Like, you know, you have to be able to ask things, even if you think there's no stupid question, right? Even if you think that you should know it, if you don't know it, you ask, because otherwise it's going to be worse in the long run. So I learned that. Yeah. What are my next goals? Well, first of all, I want to defend my thesis, so I'll become a doctor. That'll be great. And then I'm really interested in the biotech world, so hopefully I'm going to be transitioning at some point to more of a role in either like a research, you know, the biotech industry, or in the business side of things. But I am very passionate about science, so I obviously want to continue being around it. I I knew from the beginning that I wasn't really interested in academia. I like teaching, but it's just not really my passion, and I definitely admire people who do. But I think for me, I'm more of a, you know, knowing how things work behind the scenes sort of person. So yeah, so I'm hoping to stay in Silicon Valley and be around the startups and the tech around here. So yeah. Yeah, for sure. Where are the people from? I mean, I'm curious. I see people Puerto Rico. I see. Is there anybody else from Spain? From Greece. Okay, cool. Italy. Nice. Romania. Wow, cool. Slovenia, Turkey. Great. They're very international. It's the UN. Yeah, Juan Pablo from Spain. Okay, cool. All right, I see there. Judith as well. Good. Man, this is like a very European. I'm excited. This is great. Yeah, but if you are like, if any of you are interested about the high schools that I went to, there are scholarships for most. I mean, most students go there with a scholarship. So if any of your students are interested in it, like I'll be happy to give you info about that. I'm from Barcelona, so I'm Catalan. Oh yeah. That is great. Yeah. I cannot emphasize that enough. Yes, it's so important to learn another language. It's like, and I mean, I would say definitely learn English, for sure. Like English should be like, you know, almost native level if you can. Like, I mean, it's so important. And then I guess if you want to learn another language, I mean, I started learning Arabic when I was in high school, so that was one of the things that I just wanted to learn another language and another alphabet. But I think for people, I mean, most students, I think just knowing English very well is great, because then you can just travel and talk to people from other cultures and figure out how they work, because there's just other cultures are just so different. I mean, even America, sometimes I can't believe, like, we watch so many movies about America. When you come here, it's just like, wow, like it is really like the movies. Like it's crazy. But yeah, so definitely learn English. And if you're already good in English, then learn something else, you know, like learn Chinese or Russian or whatever, Hindi, or I mean Spanish if you don't know Spanish.